That song is so beautiful. Perfect. And thank you, Reverend Kathleen, for printing this out so big. Or Dan. Thank you. Good morning. The theme for 2023 is Living Out Loud. The theme for August is My Passion, My Purpose. Today's topic is Passionately Living Your Purpose Out Loud. Christian Sorensen, in his book Living from the Mountaintop, reminds us, without you, infinite potential remains just that, potential. It stays unformed possibility. It is you who are needed by life for its potential to take form. Neil Donald Walsh, in his book Communion with God, shared this very important wisdom. You will see that it is who you have been, not what you have done, that matters to your soul. And you will see that it, who you have been, is your soul. That is who you are. Let us affirm together with passion. I passionately and boldly share my purpose with the world. And now it is my honor to introduce Reverend Anne Multer, our guest speaker, and one of our community, one of our very own. And I'm so looking forward to your talk, Reverend Anne. Do you want this?
I think I'll be all right. Will I be all right here? Okay. Great. Okay, let me get organized a little bit here. It's been a while. And so, well, good morning to each one of you. Yes, it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be asked to fill in for Reverend Kathleen, who, as you all know, is recovering from COVID, I believe. And so in this moment, we hold her in our heart, in our mind, and we wish her well. We know she is healing. Dan told me this morning she was better. And so that is good. And so the theme, where did I leave that? Oh, I know. When I went in to tell Jim, this was Friday evening, and I said, you know, a year ago, at this very time, we had COVID. I don't know what it is about the end of August. And yes, it's no fun, as many of you know, and we recovered quickly, and grateful for that. And so I began thinking about this, my passion, my purpose. Made me go back in my life, think about my life. What was my passion? What was yours back then? What is it now? And so I found myself, as far back as I could go with passion, was my preteens. My little bookshelf was filled with books and statues that said one thing. Books were Misty of Chincoteague, Black Beauty, My Friend Flicka, The Black Stallion, yes, all about horses. And there was one shelf that had all this collection of horse statues. And so I don't know why that was, because I had no connection with horses. Somewhere in junior high, there was a lady who, a classmate, who lived on a dairy farm, and she had 3 or 4 horses, and she would invite me and another mutual friend to her home out in the country to go riding. And, of course, that just fueled my passion. I loved that. So I wonder, what memories do you have from your youth? What passion do you have from your youth? So in my life, I'd have to jump ahead here some 20-some years, as was quite customary then. I was married when I was about 20. We had 3 children, And after 23, 24 years, we separated, went our own ways, divorced. But in the meantime, we had enjoyed owning a few of the equine species, shall we say. Some horses and ponies for me, for the children. We had to board them. We didn't have a property big enough to have them right there. And so after we went our own ways, I found I had two left with me, and as much as I cared for them, I couldn't afford to pay that myself. And I placed them with a riding center, Great Falls Riding Center. And guess what? I soon became a riding teacher there. My passion was serving a purpose. So I'm just going to give a couple quick examples of those. One December, I was leading a small group of about, turn my timer on. About 6 students met every day for a week, and I just a regular riding class. And at the end of the week, I thought, I have some ribbons for them, and I thought about giving them each a ribbon. And of course, the ribbon in the horse world, you have blue, red, yellow, green, something like that. And I thought, no, that won't do. I want a blue ribbon for each of them. So I went back in the office, and they'd had horse shows there, and I found some blue ribbons. And so when the time came for that, at the end of the last class, I was going to hand out ribbons, and I could feel tension there, kind of who's going to get the blue ribbon, who's going to get the red ribbon. So I called the first person up, and I said something, I'm making this up now, giving you this ribbon in appreciation of the progress you have made in riding at the trot. That's the kind of most irregular gait the horse has. It bounces you up and down, but you learn to ride to it. And so then I called the next one up, and I gave them a blue ribbon for maybe going over jumps again. And you could almost feel the relief. This wasn't a judgment. This wasn't a you here, 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 here. I could see their joy when they realized they weren't being rated, but they were acknowledged for their own improvement. It gave me a sense of purpose. And one more thing I would add about my time there, which was several years and lots of classes, American University had a physical education class there on horseback riding. And the person who had been teaching it had moved away, and I was asked to take over. Had to be a college graduate. And I think my graduation degree was in education, actually. So we would have the regular riding class, but then they also learned the history of this equine species. They learned the different breeds. They learned the different colors. How many of you would know a bay horse from a chestnut horse, from a pinto horse, from a palomino? So they learned, yes. And so I felt, oh good, that's fulfilled a purpose that I had with my passion for horses. And I'm going to ask you, as we talk about this, as you look back on your life, what kind of passions did you have, and how did they outpicture in your life? And so it would be a long story, but eventually the children were in college, and one horse had died, a couple others had been retired. And so I'm going to jump to a new experience that I heard about from a friend of mine. And that was to start attending Unity of Fairfax in 1981. And Unity, of course, is another New Thought, Ancient Wisdom group of people. And eventually, the horses were behind me. Eventually, I became a staff member there. Then I studied to become a licensed Unity teacher, which the practitioners, it's about the same thing. Different name. So most of the classes were there with the minister, who was a wonderful person there at Unity of Fairfax, but the last classes were to be held at Unity Village in Missouri. Well, I've never been to Missouri, but I went there to finish out those classes for being a licensed Unity teacher while sitting in the Peace Chapel, which is a nice chapel, and in the front, the whole front, where they use this word on a beautiful background, peace be still. I have a copy of that hanging in my home now, about so big. Peace be still. And then while I was sitting in that Peace Chapel, sitting there sort of meditating, a thought came to my mind. You could be a minister. And I said, no. I had a plan. I had purchased 30 acres down in kind of middle Virginia. It was going to be my horse farm. I was going to fence it. I was going to build a barn with an apartment over top. Now, how in the world I was going to be able to do all this, I wasn't sure, but that was my plan, and plans work out, you know. And that ended when someone bulldozed a path through my front woods. To say I was shocked, horrified, never found out why, but I found out a few details. But ultimately, the company that sold me the property bought it back from me. So the horse farm dream was out of the picture, at least at that point. So I applied to ministerial school. I went out for an interview. This was kind of across the river from Leavenworth on the west side of Missouri. And during the process of learning about being a licensed Unity teacher, and they're learning about us, and then they met with each one of us individually. And I was told that most applicants for the school had two problems, issues, situations to be worked with. I had 5. Well, I wish I could recall them, but the only one I really remember, I must have them written down somewhere. The one I really remember was that I was too trusting. How could a minister be too trusting? Well, I guess, that's possible. So the next day we got letters that either supported our acceptance or rejection. And I took mine to a garden where I was all by myself because I was filled with fear that I would be rejected. I opened the envelope, and guess what? I was accepted. So ministerial school out there was my next step. And of course this became my purpose, my passion for the next 9 years, and that would be 2 years of school there. I think it's been extended to 3, some of which they take at a nearby university so they can get a degree not only from the Unity School but from a college. During that time I served in 3 different churches: Leavenworth, Charlottesville, Winchester. And perhaps like in most jobs, maybe, there were successes and there were failures. Many things I did not know, like how to stand up for myself. The diplomacy needed. And so while I enjoyed that time in my life, when I hit 65, this was a late life profession. At 65, I retired. But I had a new passion. I wanted to see the country. I'd seen a little bit. My son had moved out to Colorado. I'd been out there in the Midwest, but I wanted to see the country, all of it. Well, at least all the states. How do you do that? By car? I had a car. By bus? By train? By plane? All of those required that I find a place to spend the night, that I find a place to buy food, restaurant or something. And that wasn't going to work for me. What would? Well, how about a recreational vehicle, an RV? And I didn't know anything about RVs, but I went looking. And ultimately, I chose a 22-foot, now let's see, how long is 22 feet? Not terribly long, from bumper to bumper. You know. It was a Class C motorhome known as the Winnebago Warrior, and it turned out to be just right for me, for one person. Class C are the ones that have a little bit of a protrusion out over the driver's seat and back in, and up in that protrusion is the master bed. And so, for the next 12 years, that was my passion. I did it. I went to all the states, well, almost all of them. All of them except Alaska and Hawaii. And so, when I went to Alaska, that was a group led by the person who had been the minister down at Unity Village when I was there, and his dream was to have an online column every day. And he did for 14 years. So anyway, he was organizing a group to go on a cruise, and I joined that, mostly Unity people, and we were part of this cruise that went up the Inside Passage to Juneau, Skagway, able to get out there. That's my claim to having visited Alaska. But it was fun. It was nice. Came back, picked up my motorhome that I'd left with a friend. Hawaii. Well, I couldn't drive there. And so a few years ago, I think around the pandemic, 3 or 4 years ago, my family was all set to go. My daughter, when my daughters and her husband were sent out there, he worked for the Navy Department, and they sent him there to do something. I don't know what, but he was working there. And the rest of the family was all going to go out to Hawaii and meet there and tour Hawaii. And guess what arrived? COVID. So many things were canceled, so many things shut down. So, have you been there yet? So passion and purpose. For that little episode of how many years did I say it was? 12? I had visited all 48 states, 49 counting Alaska. I'd visited many of the state capitals, believe me, even with a small 22-foot motorhome, finding the state capitals as you drive through the city and the place to park. Could be challenging. I served as a campground host in several states, in the national parks. That was great. That was fun. I liked doing that. And so I was doing this all by myself. People think, aren't you lonesome? Don't you, if you didn't have someone with you, shouldn't, my successes were mine, my failures were mine. And guess what? There was no one telling me what to do. So having a passion and a purpose is fulfilling. How are you doing with your thoughts about your early passions and fulfillments along the way? How that was your passion and how that became your purpose? Because of all these, in some way, shape, or form, was a passion that did have purpose to it. And so I've learned about that, my passions, my purpose, and for me they have obviously changed over the years. But I have found more recently there's a voice in my head that is a spiritual voice that is guiding me. And I have learned to listen to it, to pay attention, to be grateful for it. I wish I could think of an example right now, but I guess I started out thinking, where'd that thought come from? And I thought, that's a pretty good thought. Maybe you should be paying attention to it. So how can we live our purpose with visibility and with passion? I think we have wonderful examples within this community. Reverend Kathleen sets a remarkable example, as do our musicians. Those that help facilitate the service. Yes, I don't know what time you get here to set all this up and to get things organized. And those who stay after to clean up. Those who set out the coffee and the treats. In other words, seems like everyone here functions in a purposeful way to energize this community. Since Jim and I started coming here, which has been a little over, I think over a year, we found this to be a wonderful spiritual community, sharing, serving, and expressing their unity of community, their love, their passion. So you might be asking yourself, how do I live my purpose with a passion? And so I think it is quite wonderful that we've had this subject this month to talk about. What is our passion? How far back does it go? What is your purpose with that passion? So I read recently a story, and I thought it was in Positive Christianity, but I couldn't find it there. In other words, I just plain couldn't find it, so I'm going to have to tell it. This is about a young boy of 10, about 10. He began taking piano lessons. This was written by his piano teacher, I guess. Didn't do well. He didn't seem to like it. Didn't seem to practice. His piano teacher was quite dismayed. He was making no progress. And then he stopped coming. So she thought, well, they just dropped out. They just quit. It'd be nice if they'd let me know, but they just quit. She was actually relieved because she couldn't seem to teach him. And then the time came when she had her students lined up to present a concert, each sharing their playing. And to her dismay, this young boy also signed up. And she said, he can't play. She decided to put him last among the students, and right after that she would play a nice piece, and she could play it herself. And when his turn came, she was absolutely amazed that he played a very beautiful, very classic piece of music. And when she asked him about it, I guess as probably each student came up at the end of the presentation, when she asked him about it, he said he hadn't been there because his mother had died of cancer. And he said she was also deaf and had never heard his piano playing. But now she had moved on, and wherever she was, she had no more deafness. And I'm getting teary-eyed. And so he had learned to play, really worked on it in those missed weeks. He did that so she could now hear him. It was his love for her that motivated him to practice piano when he hadn't been willing to do so at all. He wanted her to hear him. She could be proud of him. So I found that a very touching story about having a purpose and being motivated by love. Life is about living, it's trying, it's growing, it's learning, and loving it. Turn my timer off, I think. Got another minute yet. And so, more recently, I told you about past events. More recently, I moved up in this area to be close to one of my daughters. I found a catalog about OLLI, Osher Lifelong Learning for seniors, and I started going to that. The second year, I signed up for a class of Minds and Men, and women too, so women could come into class too. I think that name went way back. So it was that I walked into this class, and Jim Crumb was the leader. Certainly led to changes in my life. But some of the things that I really value is that I'm finding my voice. I can't say I've completely found it. I still get overridden by others, but I'm free to express my feelings. If I'm angry, if I'm upset, if I want to do something, if I don't want to do something. We've had honest discussions about what we expect. How do you share your life when you're in your mid-80s and older? Okay, how do we do that? Honesty, openness, and by going for a 1 to 2 mile walk every day. We're surrounded by state and county parks, which is wonderful. By exercising, by eating good food. Jim tends toward veganism. We eat pretty simply. Except Tuesday when I'm making a cake and having chocolate chip ice cream with it. I will be 86 then. So we've been coming here for the year, about the past year. You have made us feel very welcome. You've made us part of this wonderful community. So you get a big thank you. And God bless you.